Bases dropped on a beautiful Wednesday morning here in Atlanta, Georgia, April 17th. It's a Wall Pass Wednesday edition of Soccer Down here. That means we're taking your questions throughout the show. Basically, a 2-hour AMA. If you're familiar with Reddit, ask us anything, we'll get into it. We have a good one to kick things off. Jason Longshore, John Nelson here with you this morning, and let's get into the question that actually came in a little early. Now, Kevin from Charlotte might have to adjust his Twitter name if he's starting off with greetings from Charleston. I'm confused about where Kevin is actually from. I don't know. Kevin from Charlotte from Charleston here.
Kevin from Charlestonlet.
No, don't do that because Charleston and Charlotte will then at you at OSG Nelson for that travesty. You can't
don't
combine
just sing
the
it,
two.
bring it.
Yeah,
Why
don't
not?
do that. All right, so his question, and we got to pick if it was a Tuesday Thoughts or a Wall Pass Wednesday. We saved it for Wall Pass Wednesday. What are your sports talk pet peeves? My soccer ones are, quote, player X is finding joy, unquote, and, quote, team X is asking a lot of questions, unquote. What do you think? And don't do because I've said finding joy before. I don't love it, and it's a pretty new one.
I've honestly never heard it that much.
It's pretty recent. It's very common in the last year or two. I had never really heard it before that. I'm trying to think of a prime example. Let's see. Last week, Tito Villalba was finding a lot of joy out wide.
Okay.
I don't know where it started. I don't know where it came from. I don't know if it was an American broadcast thing or if it was an English thing. I'm not sure. I hadn't really heard it much until recently, and now it's pretty common. It's not my favorite. I've said it before because sometimes you do fall back on these things. You can't help it.
Right.
But it's one that I try to avoid. The asking a lot of questions one, I like the idea of it, and I know I've used it because sometimes it is just the quickest route to where you want to go with a topic or a point, especially in a match where sometimes you got to get there quick.
Yeah.
But the concept is fine. I think it's one that gets overused, and I think sometimes it just gets used incorrectly, and that's the biggest issue I'll have with that one. You know, not every nice play is a team asking a lot of questions.
True. Let's see. For me, I would say using the phrase ready for the challenge.
Okay.
That one I have heard incessantly over the last handful of years. So-and-so's ready for the challenge. So-and-so's ready for the challenge. And that is a fallback. It's another fallback to get you out of a sentence and onto your next thought. It's used in interviews when athletes use it, and athletes use that as their fallback, and on-air talent use it as well as a bit of a fallback. So that one. Then home team has suggested overdone formulas like who's your Mount Rushmore of whatever.
That's one we've used before, and it can definitely get overdone. It's not something you do all the time. It gives just context to a best of all time, a greatest discussion. It does get overused. I'll completely agree with that. But it can be fun from time to time.
Yeah.
I don't hate that.
Another sports talk pet peeve for me is just basic journalism and just throwing something out there in an argument without having the backup of facts. You know, if you're going to say something involved in a discussion, have the facts to back it up. But I understand that sports talk is about opinion and all that kind of stuff. But for me, you know, if you're going to have an argument and you're going to have a point of view, you know, have your facts right about said argument. If you're going to challenge something, make sure that your facts are correct when you're disputing something, instead of just saying something to throw it up against the wall.
I mean, it depends on the context, and look, there's a big difference, I think, between this type of format that is open ended, you can take it wherever, and a match or a game broadcast. And I think there's two different sets of cliches and overused terms. Now they do cross over in some ways, but there's some big differences. Like, just you can't just bring a random opinion like that in a game. It's not the place. In something like this, if you want to start a conversation, sure. I think it can work. It can't be all you have, though. It can't be all that you do is just to say, this guy's a good player, period.
Or this guy sucks, period.
This guy's awful and doesn't do anything, period. Like,
yeah, Messi sucks.
Because it's a conversation.
Yeah.
Well, people say that. That does happen from time to time. They're wrong, but it does happen from time to time. People have a big tendency these days, I think, to overreact. Just completely
that's just Mondays.
Overreact. No, it's definitely not Mondays. It's every day that ends in a Y on a regular basis. Sometimes Twitter and social media is really hard to deal with because of that. I get it. It's a megaphone. It's an opportunity when we were kids and we would overreact to a game or get all up in our feelings. You'd say it to your buddies on the playground. You'd say it to your friends in the hallway at school. You'd say it, having a drink at the bar, and 5 other people would hear it. Now you can tweet it out, and everybody gets to hear it, and then everybody gets to chime in, and then conversations just go downhill. Because
Tafka's got one.
Uh-oh, what's Tafka got?
Okay. Tafka says, not perfectly on point, but hearing the exact same cadence, volume, and intensity in Taylor Twellman comments on anything exciting happening in a game. Taylor's done amazing things for us. For U.S. soccer, I just don't enjoy his broadcasting. Here's what I wanted to bring in. Also, I don't love Talisman.
Oh, I kind of like Talisman from time to time. It's one that can get overused. I think anything can get overused. I mean, we want to get down to it for real. That's one that it's a small set of players who I think fit into that type of description. It's not just every good player. Barcelona has many great players. Their talisman is Lionel Messi. Like, as Messi goes, that team's going to go generally. Coutinho, great player, not a talisman. Luis Suarez, great player, not a talisman. Manchester United?
Ter Stegen?
No, not funny. Manchester United doesn't really have a talisman.
No.
Not every club does. It's okay. It's not it's something that some people use it to replace top player, and it's just not. It's a very specific type of player to me, and that's the way I use it anyway. I don't know.
All right, so then let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Is Frankie de Jong a talisman?
No, I don't think so. I don't think Ajax really has one. I think at times, no, I really don't think Ajax has one. I think they're just built on the team game. I think a lot of clubs don't have one. A lot of top clubs don't have one. That's okay.
Is Salah
it's
a
not
talisman?
bad thing. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. He's the emotional leader for that team in a lot of ways. When he's on, you get a reaction out of everybody. That's
Raheem
an important
Sterling.
part of that role. No, because they have a lot of people who spread the wealth there. I don't think Manchester City necessarily has one.
Harry Kane.
No, because they've performed just fine without him. I would say Dele Alli's probably more of a talisman for Spurs than Kane, and I don't think he is either. It's a very small subset of people. I mean, in MLS, who would be that type of player? I think Carlos Vela is.
Yeah.
I think Zlatan is.
Yeah.
I think
Rooney?
Diego Valeri has been. I'm not sure if he still has that type of power. Nacho Piatti has been. He's the power's waning a bit. Nani could be that for Orlando. It's looking that way.
What about in DC?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I would say so. I would go ahead and say that, even though he hasn't been there super long. I think he has that effect on that team. I think a player like that just is a lift to the whole group. It's not just a good player. And that's where I think I'll bristle at that phrase, is when it's just, oh, the best player is the talisman. No. There's plenty of teams that don't have one. That's just how I use it anyway. I do use it. I don't use it a ton, but I do use it.
John Dulsar's got a couple here that we can get into.
Okay, what do we got?
To describe a central midfielder, engine room.
That's one I don't really use much. I get
That
it.
seems
I
pretty.
mean,
Yeah.
it is. The concept is good. Yeah, I don't really use that.
And then to describe a poorly timed challenge, agricultural defending.
I've never used that one.
I've
I don't
never
know if
heard
I've
of that.
Heard that. That's pretty funny though.
It's a good one.
That one in.
Yeah, I mean that's a grass cutting for me would be a poorly timed challenge along that same vein.
That's funny. Here's one that I would like to bring to the floor for opinion. Get stuck in. It's a very English term.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, it is very common here. Our game is borrows heavily from the English game. Get stuck in is a very common one. What do you think?
And I'm asking because I've not heard it. What is it?
What?
I mean,
You watch
Get
the
Stuck
Premier League
In?
more than I do. You've never heard Get Stuck In? John.
Or if I have, it just blew past me. What's the
Man.
context?
You need more Mountain Dew this morning.
You ain't lying.
Basically, just, if you go in hard for a tackle, you play physical. I mean, it can get used a lot of different ways. You can get stuck in on a tackle. You can, have a team that gets stuck in general, just as an aggressive team. I understand the imagery. I'm not a huge fan of it. I feel like a bit of an imposter when I use it.
Yeah.
Because it feels like it has to be said with a British accent, and I don't have that, so I don't know. I never used it as a kid growing up.
Yeah. Tafka says we've already said the word talisman too much this morning, and then Jane Ames asks if Pitti was the talisman at River Plate.
Ah, yes. I think Pitti definitely was the talisman at River Plate. Although it might have been one of the rare times that you had a dual talisman in a lot of ways with Juan Fernando Quintero. So that's kind of an interesting one that they maybe shared the talisman qualities. And yes, I'm trying to say talisman as many more times as possible to drive Tafka crazy.
There with you.
There's been some talismans in Major League Soccer, but again, it's not every team has one. And I don't like when it gets used just to describe good player. Yeah, I will completely fight that one for sure.
I'm trying to think of others.
The hairdryer treatment. That's another classic English one.
Yeah, I mean, I use that one in conversation and occasionally on the air, but I don't.
I can't use it. I feel weird saying it.
Yeah. Because for me, it's always associated with Sir Alex.
Yeah.
And
another one that okay, Kevin Egan can say this and it works. If I said it, people would throw things at me. Squeaky bum time.
I use that late in the year. I don't use it late in a match.
I can't use it. I feel silly using it.
Yeah, I mean, I understand when Paul Merson when Paul Merson uses it on Sky Sports, or when Charlie uses it when they're doing their Sky Sports stuff on Premier League games. But for me, Squeaky Bum Sunday, I would use it probably for the latter stages of the season. I just can't use it in context during the season itself. But no, I get that one.
What are some others on your end?
Oh goodness! But I mean, most of them just have to do with prep. I'm trying to think of, trying to, and for me, because my mother was an English major, it's guys who are trying to mangle the English language. And Tafka has sent you a GIF, by the way.
Oh, figured. Well, let me get back while you're thinking. Let me get back to Tafka's first
Go for
point, since we derailed it with talking about talismans all over the place. Same cadence, volume, intensity, and he's specifically talking about Taylor Twellman. I'll disagree when it comes to Taylor. I think he has a lot of volume and intensity changes. It's a hard thing to do. I mean, some games it's easier than others because of just the way the game flows. I'll notice it in my own voice on games that are kind of flat.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a challenge to find those ups and downs. I do kind of have a thought about being sing-songy in some ways, having those ups and downs. And
but to me, there's a difference between being sing-songy and being emotional, and there is a line there, and I know that some folks get sing-songy just to kind of get out of a thought or get out of an idea.
I do that. And that's a lot of my transition is doing that.
But I mean, for me to do sing-songy over a full 90 minutes seems fairly impossible.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can't. I don't think it's something you can manufacture. I mean, that's kind of just how I talk. It's how I speak. So I don't think too much about trying to fake it and to push myself to go up or go down or do things like that. So that helps, but I do notice when a game's kind of flat, it's like, okay, you want to bring something to the table to keep it interesting to the listener's ear. And whether that's, diving into a point that if there's just not a lot going on in the match, for example, and diving into a point about whether it's a player who's been playing well or the next match or whatever, to get some of those ups and downs, try to do that. It's a tough one. I mean, there's some games that are just harder to call than others, just flat out, and that happens, and that's okay.
Nathan Pugh has a very Stephen Wright-ish kind of thought.
I see it.
Top drawer is always a weird one. Why is the top better than the bottom? # Well Past Wednesday.
You got to bend over to get to the bottom drawer? I don't know. I'm guessing. But I like a shot.
I don't think I don't think one's better. I mean, you just go top shelf, top drawer, and bottom shelf, bottom drawer. I mean, I think it takes too long to say bottom shelf, bottom drawer when you just say top shelf, boom, top drawer.
For me,
boom.
there's just some things that don't feel natural. I mean, the other one now that I see a lot, that's a pretty recent one, is top bins. It's just like
never
I can't
heard
say that. You don't pay much attention, John. I'm realizing this. So you got to listen to the announcers a little closer. It's this thing like there's just some phrases that if I said it would feel weird to me. It's that imposter, scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is some phraseology that is, it's locked into one set of geography. And I think that there are some American phrases that if they tried to use them in the Prem, it would sound completely and totally out of place.
But what's frustrating is that but the mentality is that, oh, well, that's just wrong then. If you speak like an American calling the game, then, oh, no, you're bad. And that's not true either.
No.
I honestly try different. It's different audiences. It's different countries. It's different ways of doing things. It's not right or wrong. I mean, I don't think squeaky bum time is a bad phrase. It completely captures the situation, but I would feel silly saying it because I don't talk about people's bums. It's just not me. So it's cool. I honestly try, when I can, to pick things up from Spanish announcers and bring that to an English audience. An English-speaking audience. I enjoy that, and that's something that I think doesn't happen enough. That's a lot of fun. So I like that type of stuff. I like to describe things the way that I've heard them described as a player, as a coach, as an administrator in the United States. And it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's just what's said here.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I will readily admit that there is some terminology that I use when I'm calling a twos match that I've brought over from calling other sports. And for me, it's a way of, having the casual fan understand where things are. Like if something is at the edge of the area, right there at that 90 degree, I'll call it the elbow. Just because from my calling basketball, when you're at the free throw line and you're right there at the edge, that's the elbow. That's just what they've called it. So I'll drop in that kind of a term just because I've seen that 90 degree used in the past. And so at that particular point of the pitch, I may drop in elbow occasionally just because of my past calling of the other sports.
Yeah, I mean, but you're in a different position than I am calling those because I can't do that. Like that would be off if I did that. But if I do bring other sports things into it, and I probably do it more with the first team on 92.9 than I do on the twos games, because I think it is a little bit different audience and a broader audience. I will bring in comparisons to other sports, probably once or twice in a game, or I'll reference other things, but I'll do it at a time where I can explain it.
Yeah.
I don't just drop it and leave it, because that can feel a little disrespectful to the sport that you're on.
Understand
but I think
completely.
It's a good thing to be able to reference other things.
No doubt.
And I think that helps. And I think that's something that you couldn't do on a Premier League game. You couldn't do it, in La Liga. It wouldn't work. But here, I think it does work in our conversation, and it probably works better in Atlanta than it would in other American markets. But as we were talking about yesterday, when you get into, and as we've talked about a lot in the last week or so, about growing the game and being willing to grow the game, that's an element of it that maybe other markets and other groups should look at a little bit more. Let's take a break here. We'll take more questions as we go. Lots of comments on this, which is a good fun conversation. We'll get Mike Conti's thoughts on it at 10 o'clock as well. Hang out. We'll be right back.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Every hiring manager knows that a company is only as good as the people it's made from. So where do you find the best people? That may surprise you.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
This is talent worth knowing about.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, Wall Pass Wednesday, taking your questions, taking your topics. Trains chimes in, and Trains continues to beat the same drum that Trains has been beating for a little while. No specific sports talk phrase, just overhype, particularly in the offseason. Taking a narrow team-centric view of instead of league-wide is just lazy. Happens too often in Atlanta sports talk. Not completely wrong at all. I think, and especially, this is not even an Atlanta thing. This is a American soccer thing for me. I don't think the league in the overall context is talked about enough. I don't.
No.
And I think that's a big issue, and I think that's why you see national TV broadcasts not draw very well, because if it's Minnesota and NYC, it's in Minnesota, so the majority of the Minnesota United fan base is invested in it. They're there. They're at viewing parties, what have you. NYC, well, you would think they'd have a larger fan base that would be watching from New York, but maybe not. Who else is going to watch that match? That's the thing. I think Atlanta does draw nationally better than most. I think LA Galaxy right now, I think Stars draw nationally. Zlatan's going to draw. Rooney's going to draw. I think Carlos Vela draws. That's okay.
Bob Bradley.
Bob Bradley does not draw. You're not watching a game for Bob Bradley. What are you talking about?
Just on name recognition.
But nobody's watching a game for Bob Bradley. That goes back to me, to soccer people who are overinflating soccer personalities. Nobody's going to watch a game to see what Bob Bradley's going to do tactically. It's not going to move the needle. The people in the league, I think the things that move the needle from a national perspective, Atlanta United does. I think the ratings backed that up last year. I think people want to see what's happening. Zlatan obviously does. He is a superstar. Mm-hmm. He is a megastar. Wayne Rooney, superstar.
Yep.
Moves the needle. Carlos Vela, I think, does. I think at a lesser extent, but he does, and he does especially on Spanish language national broadcasts.
Right.
For sure. Who else in the league does? And that's really the question, because in that Minnesota-NYC match, there's nothing to pull you in if you're a neutral or if you're a fan of another team in the league. Now, let's be real about something here. This is not just an MLS thing. What teams get on national TV in the NBA who makes a ton of money in broadcast?
It's
wherever
Warriors,
LeBron
it's
is
Lakers.
playing. Well, it's wherever LeBron is playing, because the Lakers were not getting there before LeBron signed.
No.
They were when Kobe was there. They were not getting there in between. Then they got there this year with LeBron. The Warriors, because of their big personality, Steph Curry especially, there's not a ton of others. You're not going to see who's one of the best teams in the East, Milwaukee. You're not seeing them on national TV because they don't move the needle. Even with a superstar like Giannis, they're not moving the needle like others.
Not really?
Not really. I mean, the big games are going to be those teams with big superstars. It's been that way since Jordan Bird Magic. That's okay. The NFL is the only true, and college football as well, to a lesser extent, but the NFL is the true national sports property where you're likely going to watch Thursday night football because it's on. You're going to watch Sunday night football because usually it's the best game of the week. That's what happens. If you're a football fan, you're going to watch that. If you're a soccer fan, if you're an MLS fan, you might not watch Minnesota and NYC. You might not watch Sporting Kansas City and the Red Bulls. That does need to change. I agree. But the thing for Trains, where Trains is going here about local markets not talking league-wide, I do agree, although local markets are going to talk local more than anything, and that's how it is in all sports. That's what drives ratings. It flat out does. The difference for Major League Soccer is you don't have national voices talking about the National League. That's the biggest issue. You have NFL Live, you have every debate show on ESPN or FS1 talking about the NFL, talking about college football when it gets down to the nitty-gritty. Right,
and it's
now,
not just
talking
in
about
season.
the NBA playoffs. Well, NFL will be talked about year-round, period. Just flat out. But look at it even right now on those major national voices. You're not seeing a lot of talk about the NHL, even though it's the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Nope.
You're not seeing a ton of talk about Major League Baseball right now, even though the season just started. It's a lot of NFL draft. It's some NBA finals. That's what's getting talked about on Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith and that crew. They're not talking about what's going wrong with the Red Bulls. Is Dome Toronto going to get fired? Minnesota's new stadium. They're not talking about those things. So I don't think the national thing changes if local markets talk about the national side. I don't think it changes dramatically. I do think talking about the national context helps local fans understand where their club fits. And that's something I've always tried to do. And maybe I'm not doing a good enough job of it for Trains and others, but I've tried to talk about the national context and who's trending up, who's trending down, why this game means something, why you need to keep up with Dallas, why you need to keep up with other teams in the league. That is a part of it, but it's not the primary part of it on a local level. It's just not. So there you go. That was a fun little bit, and I do think that the national gap, and you can probably speak to this, John, better than I could when it comes to the National Hockey League, because I think there's a lot of symmetry between MLS and the NHL. I think they're very level on everything right now. I mean, you talk about Big Four, and now I see a lot of people say the Big Four plus MLS. Well, is it Big Four or Big Five? I mean, what is it? I think it's a Big Five because I think MLS and the NHL.
No, it's fine.
I think MLS and the NHL are pretty much at the same level right now. And the NHL, go through, for people who don't know, the NHL when they were on ESPN Fox, big national talk, and then went away from that, and the change that they went through and what they had to do to get to, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they dipped a little bit, but now have kind of solidified, and the NHL's in a pretty good place financially. Is that fair?
I mean, when you had the contract go away from, and then I'm going to go way back before I come forward here. The league was on decent footing when it came to television viewing, USA and all that stuff. Then Sports Channel came in and decided to throw big money at the NHL, and the NHL took it. Viewership, because not every market in the country had a Sports Channel section on their cable. Sports Channel, New York, Philadelphia, all that. In the Northeast, in the Midwest to a certain degree, and in the West to a certain degree. But the NHL took the paycheck. Viewership went completely and totally. Then ESPN came along after the Sports Channel contract was proved to be an abject disaster for the National Hockey League. And it started out being, okay, we'll just put you on the air and we'll do an ad share. And then it grew and it grew and it grew with the personalities that were there. And then ESPN had it on solid footing after a couple of contracts. Then NBCSN came in. And this is where it's been over the last handful of years. And what has appealed to the National Hockey League is that this time of year specifically, you have you have 4 outputs for the Stanley Cup playoffs. You have NBCSN, you have CNBC, you have the NHL Network, and you have Big NBC. So right now, this time of year, during any given night, it could be on any one of 4 different networks. And on the weekend, it's usually on 4, especially this time of year when you have 16 teams in the playoffs. Financially, you had teams that were looking to move. Calgary threatened to move. They're still threatening to move because they won a new arena. And, you can come to the local example of Atlanta. And the Atlanta ownership group was not solid at all. Did it with smoke and mirrors, if you ask me. Mm-hmm. And then basically frustrated the ever-living daylights out of the National Hockey League offices in New York. And when Thomson Reuters comes along, and they're based in Winnipeg, and they say, well, we want to buy the Atlanta Thrashers and move them to Winnipeg, then the NHL is going to sit there and say, sure. Phoenix Coyotes were on the verge of being bought and moved to Seattle, but with the snowbirds that come from Canada to watch games in Arizona, the Coyotes had a better chance of staying than the Thrashers did, and that's where they are right now. They're still not drawing. They're doing better on the ice. And that's just why Phoenix is staying as a top 20 market, and Atlanta did not. But when you look at how things have grown, you look at the franchises that are there now, Columbus selling out. It's a medium-sized market, but they're doing it and they're marketing it well. They finally got out of their first playoff series. You have a Vegas where a mega millionaire like Bill Foley wants to bring in an expansion team. And the NHL's like, okay, we'll take that paycheck. So part and parcel building an arena. You've seen what they've been able to do. I'm not going to call them an expansion team because they were constructed differently. So you have medium-sized markets with ownership groups that are heavily invested and quite well off, that are seeing things grow. And last night, a prime example, you had two of your top seeds in the East knocked out. Pittsburgh swept by the New York Islanders, who are the redheaded stepchild in that market with three teams. And then Tampa, who had one of the best seasons ever on record, bumped out by Columbus. So there is a bit of parity when it comes to playoffs and playoff rosters. And there's a bit of parity when it comes to ownerships, and they're moving into Seattle in a couple of years. So the NHL is right there, and they're on a more solid footing than they were probably, 20 years or so ago when there were a couple of teams that were on life support.
Yeah, it's an interesting comparison. Like I think MLS I think it's surpassed the NHL in some ways. And I think there's still a lot of ways to grow. I mean, the NHL brings in more money on TV than MLS. NHL ratings are better, but not by the amount that the revenue is better, I don't think. I mean, I don't know. You'd have to tell me about NHL TV ratings. I don't think they're that strong. No. But they're better than MLS, which is not good.
but it's also not by much.
Right. It's not by as much as the contract dollar figures are.
Right.
And that's something I think just historically that MLS has to catch up to. There is still a bit of a perception about things that maybe are not the case anymore. So yeah, it's an interesting discussion. And I think both have things to learn, and I think they're both honestly going to learn from one another in a lot of ways. So we'll keep up with that. But we're going to take a break here. We'll get into more of your announcer phrases, whether it's in a sports talk context or in a match broadcast. We have a few more submissions that we have to discuss right after this.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Got issues with youth or high school sports? Positive Coaching Alliance can help. PCA is a national nonprofit working to transform youth and high school sports so that every child has a positive character-building youth sports experience. PCA provides live and online workshops to train double-goal coaches whose first goal is winning and whose second, more important goal is teaching life lessons through sports. PCA also has workshops for parents and high school student-athletes. For more information, please visit positivecoach.org.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinsky of Apolinsky & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
I adopted Bento in 2010 from a shelter. This cat makes me make art. He's always motivating me to draw pictures of him. He just is motivating artistically. He's my best friend, but a lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
Keyboard Cat, YouTube star and shelter pet. Amazing adoption stories start in shelters. Start yours today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. Well past Wednesday. We're taking your questions, your comments. Kevin from Charlotte or Charleston, depending on the day, ask about overused phrases in sports talk. We've kind of broadened it to broadcast as well since John and I do both. John Dolazar with a good one. Played a lot of FIFA 98. And the early days of the FIFA games, you didn't have the same technology that you have now, so you had limited phrasing from the announcers on the games. John Madden Football was the same way. I mean, it was like the same 5 things every game, and it'd drive you nuts. But Martin Tyler in FIFA 98, according to John Dolazar, Overmars flying down the wing.
Flying down the wing.
Most heard phrase. I know I've used flying before, and that's probably one that I do use a fair bit. So I get that one. It's a fun way to explain somebody like just very fast down the wing.
Yeah. Katie Weaver has a couple.
Okay.
And she was laughing at us saying, she says, y'all don't say squeaky bum time, please.
No, I'm not going to do it.
Because I feel like I need to do that as Kevin Egan or in a British accent.
I can't do
and then she wanted to know if the old onion bag for a goal is just a Tommy Smith thing.
Yes. Yeah, that's just Tommy's. You can't take that one. You can't take it's in the net from Dave Johnson. You can't steal those. Those are trademarked, or they should be.
And then Katie had a thought on tone and style. She says, I know JP's an icon, but I really think he gets too excitable when teams even approach the 18.
For big games, yeah, and I'm okay with that. You can't do that for every match, and I think JP doesn't. But for a final, for a semifinal, for a big match, yeah, I'm cool with it because it feels big. And JP, I mean, I've heard JP call games pretty much since I got into soccer as a kid. I think the first non-World Cup game I saw, and I know JP called some games in '86 when ESPN had some of them, but the first game I saw after that World Cup had to be Major Indoor Soccer League on ESPN or USA or whatever, and JP was on the call. So I've grown up listening to JP, had the chance to talk to him on multiple occasions. Like the nicest guy.
No doubt.
The absolute nicest guy and such an absolute professional. We were doing when Soccer Bowl was here for the North American Soccer League in 2013, and Atlanta hosted it, and they had the league award ceremony the night before the match, and it was at Park Tavern. I was helping with the music and PA and all of that and kind of helping things move along, and JP was the MC. And you get events like this, and you get events like this with a league that has a very small front office staff, and it's just chaos. Things move around, things change. Your running order just completely changes in the run of show. And JP just blew me away with how smooth he was. You know, after every award, it felt like, okay, this one's moving up here, this one's moving here. He's just like, all right, what's next? What do I have to do? Okay, cool, got it. Just awesome. And I had a chance to talk to him because JP called the Thrashers games.
Yes.
And I had a chance to see him at a soccer convention the year after the Thrashers went away and talk to him about it. And he really hated to see that, and he hated to not be in Atlanta as much because he loved Atlanta and he loved his time here. So JP Dellacamera, one of the greats, one of the best.
And always hearing JP Dellacamera Taikio almost slurred as one individual.
Yep.
When they were doing matches together.
Well, it was JP and Ty, and it was JP and Seamus Mallon for a long time, too.
Yes, Seamus Mallon. There you go.
Yeah, Seamus was outstanding.
Nathan Pugh, pre-match, quote, I guess we'll just have to see how it plays out, end quote. Well, no, duh. So cliche. Only in Italy was the match predetermined.
Well, there's other countries where it's been predetermined. Don't put that only on Italy. But yeah, that's a all right. We got to fill, and we're out of things to say.
Yeah, we got to fade here. So how am I going to? Yes,
to the break.
Yes,
I don't have anything else to say. Yeah.
Okay. Now here's where I have to disagree with Trains.
Yes, I do too. Sorry, Trains.
The Max Bretos, yes, is an abomination, especially high-scoring games. Disagree. Circle gets the square.
Well, he doesn't do it all the time, and that's what I like about it. And that's another one that's trademarked. You can't rip that one off from Max.
No.
He doesn't use that on every goal. First off, which is interesting because that is his goal call, and it's not what he does every time. There's goals that he doesn't use it. But he also varies it. No, it's not even that. It's not just like great goals either. It's just he doesn't always use it, but he also varies the delivery of it. Like I've heard him at times, especially like after a penalty, if it's goal 4 to make it 4-1, it's like, yes. It's very soft.
There's context and place to how he uses the call.
Yes. And I think that's what I like about it.
Yeah. If it's a golazo, he comes out of his shoes with it. If it's matter of fact, it's a matter of fact. Yes. If it was solid from the absolute beginning, then it's laid in there. So the variety of the terminology and how he uses it, the variety of the call is what sticks with me with Max.
You want a high-scoring game to go check out Max going off, and I'm sure the highlights are still on YouTube. Red Bulls Galaxy 2008 on Fox Soccer Channel. I think it's 2000. It might be 2007. Actually, I think it's 2007 because it was Beckham's first trip to Giant Stadium, and they had like 60,000, and it was a 5-4 or 4-3. I mean, it was just nuts. Josie Altidore scored a couple. Beckham assisted on a couple. Just a wild, insane match. So you want a lot of different yes goal calls. That's the one to go find. We'll blast that one out here in a minute. Yeah, I love it. I love it. I like that LAFC is doing their broadcasts differently. I do like what they're doing branding wise around that club. You had to do something. I think they're in a different boat than a lot of teams because the Galaxy are across town. Like they had to differentiate themselves. And the whole thing, I mean, they're still this year having like guest color commentators, right?
Yep. Ian Joy was last week.
Okay, so you're bringing in different people each week. I'm sure Max has a blast with that. The one thing I don't love is that they use the Univision graphics package. That's kind of weird when everybody else uses a different one for their local broadcasts, but it's not a huge deal. The thing that I love the most about LAFC from a branding perspective of what they've become is playing Hollywood swinging after wins at home. That is such a great pull. Because you could have went so many different ways for a victory song in Los Angeles. That's not the obvious one or maybe the most obvious one, but it's perfect. It's just perfect when you're watching a game from Bank of California and that song starts to ring out at the end. I hope I don't hear it later this season. No offense, LAFC, but I'd rather not have an LAFC win when Atlanta comes out there. But I do enjoy when I'm watching a game from Bank of California and hearing that ring out. Cooling the gang after a match is always good.
Because the LA Kings went straight Randy Newman during their Stanley Cup run.
That's probably the most obvious one is you go to that. I love that they're going with Hollywood swinging. When I heard that after their first game and their first win at home, I was just grinning, loving it. It was great.
Tafka is not a Max Bretos fan.
It's honestly, I think Max is one of those guys that he gets a reaction. He absolutely gets a reaction from people, and that's not a bad thing. If you don't like him, that's completely fine. I think the people who do really like him. He doesn't just blend into the background at all.
No.
I'm cool with that.
Yeah, and what they've always told us is that if half the people hate you, half the people like you, you're doing your job.
I think you have a lot of and this is all sports. This isn't a soccer thing. I think you just have a lot of announcers now, and maybe it's just the new style is to blend into the background. That's not what grabs my attention. Maybe I'm just wired differently. I don't know, but I like when you notice the person.
Yeah. Because that person is attached to the personality of the club that they're with.
Well, even on a national game, it doesn't have to be a club call. I mean, it can be a national broadcast too. I just like some personality because otherwise I can get bored. Yeah. Well, JP. I mean, JP's not the flashiest, but JP has personality and it comes out. Seamus Mallon had tons of personality and it came out. You knew who he was and what he was all about. You go back to the old school North American Soccer League days, and Paul Gardner, longtime columnist for Soccer America, you knew his personality. You knew what he was all about. Those are good things. So it's interesting. It's just it's a fun industry to watch evolve. And first as a spectator to it and listening to all sports, and then now like being a part of it it's pretty wild. It's a lot of fun. Let's take our final break of hour number 1. More Wall Pass Wednesday comments from you guys after this, and Mike Conti will join us at 10 o'clock. Be right back.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Every hiring manager knows that a company is only as good as the people it's made from. So where do you find the best people? That may surprise you.
Meet the grads of life, young adults of unique determination and experience, an ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
This is talent worth knowing about.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Final segment, hour number 1. Wall Pass Wednesday, April 17th. Soccer down here. Jason Longshore, John Nelson with you this morning. Mike Conti joining us in the next segment. Talking announcing, cliches, overused phrases, people you like, people you don't like, all kinds of stuff going on.
Stylistics.
The FIFA 98 one from John Dolazar was funny because I do remember those types of phrases, and I think honestly for a lot of people who have gotten into the game from the video games, like those are phrases that feel natural to you that might not feel that way to others who have found the game differently. And that's the thing, I think, culturally. There's just so many different things about the way the game is discussed in Argentina versus Mexico, in England versus Germany. There's so many different ways to talk about it, and they all bleed through into the commentary.
And so, I mean, I know that, I pull things from other people, and I will readily admit that it took me probably about 10 years to figure out who I was stylistically. And that's not just in the booth. That's reporting, anchoring, studio, whatever. And, if you don't take things from other people, then either you don't hang out in the medium that you're in, you don't watch TV, you don't listen to the radio, you don't do whatever, and it's subconscious sometimes, and sometimes it's flat out. And then for me, I do it as an homage to people sometimes. And that's just how we operate as on-air talent, is that there are folks that we admire, and you sit there and you say, yeah, okay, that works. I like that. And then you pull that along, and then you continue to take that and you give it a generational look. It's like, okay, it's a term, or it's a way of thinking that carries itself through, and it adds to the fabric of what you've been calling for all this time. Doesn't matter what the sport is, really.
Yeah, for me, when I started doing this, I didn't really have a specific touchstone. I knew I wanted to be true to myself. I knew I wanted to speak about the game the way I speak about the game. And I hadn't, been doing games because we didn't really have games to do, but I'd been talking about the game probably my whole life to different people. So I wanted to speak the way I speak, talk about it the way I talk about it, and explain things the way that I've always done it. But if there was anybody that I kind of thought about as I was getting into this, it was Pete Van Wieren.
Yeah.
Because I think my role that's probably the closest comparison, is that, I'm different than most color commentators in the U.S. and probably most around the world, but definitely in the U.S. Actually, probably not around the world, because I think in other countries it's not as common to have a former player on. But here, that's the norm. There's just not, many people in my kind of role. So, somebody who worked in the game their whole life but didn't play professionally. So there's certain things that, on a broadcast, I can't go into the same way that somebody else would. So I have to have a different way of doing it. And I thought Pete was, so good at what he did. And it's nothing specific. Like, it's not specific phrases or specific ways that he, specific words he used or segments or whatever. It's just the mentality that he had and the professor persona. Yeah, that's probably my biggest touchstone, and it was something that I completely related to because I grew up listening to Pete Van Wieren and Skip Carey call games. And, honestly, from a Georgia football perspective, when you had Lauren Smith kind of riding shotgun with Larry Munson for a long time. And, Lauren it brings a different perspective to it. Now he's doing more sideline, but I think every broadcast every good broadcast has its own personality. And, I'm lucky to be able to call games with you and with Mike, and you guys, it doesn't we don't try to make it cookie cutter.
No,
it's not, well, let's see what every other radio call or every other, USL broadcast is doing, and let's just copy that. It's like, no, let's do it our way and, and make it fit into the overall context. And it's been really cool to craft that over time. That takes us up to the break. Let's get Mike Conti on. Let's get his thoughts on overused phrases that he doesn't like. We'll get into all that with Mike after the break. Stay with us. This should be fun. Be right back.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Got issues with youth or high school sports? Positive Coaching Alliance can help. PCA is a national nonprofit working to transform youth and high school sports so that every child has a positive character-building youth sports experience. PCA provides live and online workshops to train double-goal coaches whose first goal is winning and whose second, more important goal is teaching life lessons through sports. PCA also has workshops for parents and high school student athletes. For more information, please visit positivecoach.org.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
I adopted Bento in 2010 from a shelter. This cat makes me make art. He's always motivating me to draw pictures of him. He just is motivating artistically. He's my best friend, but a lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
Keyboard Cat, YouTube star and shelter pet. Amazing adoption stories start in shelters. Start yours today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back. Hour number 2, Soccer Down Here. It's Wall Pass Wednesday. We're taking your questions, your comments, and we've had a question kind of linger for the first hour, which is always fun. And we have somebody else to throw the question at right now. Mike Conti from 92.9 The Game joins us. What's up, Mike?
I can't wait to hear this question.
Okay. So this came from Kevin from Charlotte, but he said it was coming from Charleston. So I don't know where Kevin's actually from anymore. So that's baffling, first off.
Maybe he's in Charleston, but from Charlotte.
Maybe, but I don't know. I think Kevin
Charleston
might be a nomad. No, he's not that, because that would just anger Charleston and Charlotte. We don't want that. Kevin asks, what are your sports talk pet peeves? And he specifically got into phrases, and this could be sports talk or broadcast, honestly. He said his soccer ones are player X is finding joy, and Team X is asking a lot of questions.
Oh, well, I'm guilty of Team X is asking a lot of questions. I'm sorry, our friend from Charlotte. God, my sports talk pet peeves. I have always hated the, hey, who's on your Mount Rushmore of X?
Somebody brought that one up.
that one drives me nuts. That is the go-to lazy, we have nothing to talk about today, so let's throw out a who's on the Mount Rushmore of your favorite football players, or who's on your
Mount Rushmore of broadcast cliches, Mike.
Exactly, right. Yeah, I mean, that one... That one just drives me nuts, because that's a producer or a host electing to not actually ask questions of listener X and, just try to throw away a 4-hour show. As it pertains to soccer, boy, oh boy. I'd really have to think about that. I'm still getting used to the lingo a couple years into it, to be honest with you. I'm probably not the right guy to be judging certain phrases or cliches or crutch phrases that we have in soccer. Boy, I'd really have to think about that.
Well,
Mount Rushmore is the one that just drives me up a wall, though.
We had a couple of British ones that were brought into the discussion, and so if any of the three of us were to drop a British phrase like squeaky bum time and try to sound like Kevin Egan, it might come across as a little stilted.
Well, honestly, I feel like this kind of came up right before the first Atlanta United match ever against Red Bulls, when the club had handed out a sheet of paper to some media with some soccer terminology, basically saying don't call it a field, call it a pitch, so on and so forth. And they got some heat for that. I think Taylor Twellman was one of the national people that really gave the club some heat for that, because it goes back to, I think, was it Bruce Arena who said that it doesn't really matter what kind of terminology you use. If you want to Americanize soccer terminology, there is really nothing wrong with that. Whatever makes it understandable to American fans is totally fine. Am I remembering that correctly? Maybe I'm I can't
remember if it was Bruce who said it, but yeah, I mean, I look at it, I think soccer is unique in this way because, American football is American football, and you have your phrases, period. And I think in other countries, maybe they deal with that scenario. basketball, baseball, it's all the same. It is what it is. But here you have English, British influences. You have European influences, which are not necessarily the same as the Brits. You have Latin influences, which are not the same in Spain or South America or Central America and Mexico. So it's a gumbo. I mean, you have all kinds of different phrases and things that come together.
Well,
and I use them as synonyms. Field, pitch, jersey, kit. It's all the same.
Yeah. Game and match.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think one thing that we probably need to start coming to terms with is we have a generation of soccer fans in this country now whose first exposure to soccer was not the Premier League or not another European league or South American league or a Latin American league. Their first kind of induction into soccer was here in the United States. Whether it be MLS, whether it be watching the U.S. men's national team, whether it be watching the U.S. women's national team, I think a large portion of younger soccer fans may have seen their first match ever during the 1999 Women's World Cup. So I think we need to kind of come to terms with the fact that if we're going to use strictly British terminology or strictly Latin terminology, that is not going to resonate with every single fan of soccer in this country.
Nope.
And especially so here in Atlanta. I mean, I think there's evidence that Atlanta United has way more fans now than what they started with. I think a large portion of that group are people whose first introduction into professional soccer was Atlanta United. So I don't think there's really a right or a wrong way to do it anymore. I really don't. I know this discussion can be a trigger for a lot of really hardcore soccer fans who hate it when Americanized terminology is used or kind of informal, unofficial terminology is used. And to be honest with you, whatever we need to say to make it understandable to the fans is what we're going to have to do because we need more people on this bandwagon. We need to make the sport as big as it can possibly be in this country, and to try to use, strictly proper British terminology, I don't think is the right way to go.
No, because you have what would be the biggest sudden growth area you could have for soccer in the United States from an English language presentation? Latina. Mm-hmm. They're not going to respond to British terminology. Flat out. So if you want to get what is the product that is watched the most in the United States, it's Liga MX. Mm-hmm. You want to get Liga MX fans watching Major League Soccer as well. You're not going to do it by, writing down the phrases from the Premier League. It's just not the same.
Right. Well, maybe Saturday, instead of corner kick, I'll call them esquinas, and instead of fouls, I'll call them
call them tiros de esquina. Yes, right. Exactly.
I'm pretty sure I've dropped a falta before on a broadcast.
Tarjeta amarilla.
It happens.
Well, it's a lanyap now, and that's probably the best way that I can describe it. And we were talking about it in the first hour, and I told Jason, I said, one of the things that I've adapted, as I've called other sports before I've started calling soccer, was just at the edge of the area, and you're right there at the corner. I've called that the elbow because of my basketball influence. Mm-hmm. And it's, for me, I think that we have that responsibility of bringing the casual fan in, Mike, as much as we do having the hardcore knowing what's going on already.
Well, I mean, let's just address the elephant in the room here. I mean, I know there are a lot of people that don't like it when a goal occurs. I scream score. I know a lot of people don't like that because they'd rather hear me say goal because that's what, soccer announcers do. Well, I have a background calling hockey games. And like I've tried to tell people repeatedly, I was told coming up through play-by-play that you want to use as many verbs as possible. It is not possible to shoot and goal, but it is possible to shoot and score. So that's why I use the verb. And my response to critics is this. I'm calling the match on the radio. Did you know the ball went in the net based on what I said? If so, then I believe I've done my job correctly. Plus, I'm trying to be different. So I get it. And I get that people want to hear certain terminology, and they want their broadcasters to be true to the the origins of the sport. But I think at the same time we need to loosen up just a little bit. Talk like that gets into the whole kind of gatekeeping mentality where, well, it's inappropriate to say it this way because soccer fans are accustomed to hearing it this way. That's gatekeeping. Let's just accept the fact that everyone is going to have different perspectives and different ways of describing what they see out there and enjoy it and move on, because at the end of the day, we're all enjoying soccer, which is what it's all about.
Tommy Smith's made a nice career for himself, and he's said, the bulge in the old onion bag pretty much from day one. Dave Johnson has called DC United from day one, and he has his classic, it's in the net, his goal call. I did think it was very funny, though, Mike, that Barco's golazo, you did say goal.
Because I was so surprised it went in.
Yeah, I know.
I didn't really say goal.
That made me laugh a little bit.
If you listen to it carefully, I went, goal!
Yes.
Because I was so surprised it went in. So, I don't know. Sometimes it's very easy sometimes when a build-up to a goal is occurring, you can kind of look one step ahead and think about how you're going to call it. That was one where Barco, man, I thought maybe there was a 1 in 10 chance he was going to be able to curl that in. So I was so surprised that it went in that, that's the word that came out. But I guess I'm not staying true to my philosophy of using verbs, and that's. I was just so surprised. It was more of a guh than anything else.
But that was emotion, and that's what the game's all about. Yeah. And to me, that's the most important thing. Beyond phrasing and terminology and cliches. I mean, look, we all fall back on cliches sometimes. We all know this, but the emotion is something that I feel like, and maybe to me, that's the biggest difference between the way the game is presented from a broadcast perspective in Latin American countries and European countries. And especially, I think the English-British call is the emotion's more reserved there. And for me, from what what resonates with me is to have that emotion and that type of call.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there again is where you bring in more of a Latin flavor. I don't think there's much doubt that if you compare how Martin Tyler calls a game and how Jose Perez Navarro calls a game, it's completely different. I side with Jose Perez Navarro. I think if an announcer is having fun, the viewer or the listener is going to have more fun listening to it, right?
Yes.
I'm not saying Martin Tyler's not having fun, but Martin Tyler kind of put me to sleep a little bit during the 2010 World Cup. He puts me to sleep a little bit when he's calling the Premier League. I like Ian Darke because I feel like he has a little more of a emotional flavor, a little more inflection, while still having that kind of credible British sound. But I totally agree with you, Jason. I mean, who wants to watch any sport where the announcer doesn't sound like he's having fun and really, really into the game or the match or whatever he's calling?
And you mentioned verbs, and probably one of the guys that we've all kind of referenced in that, I think, is Doc Emmerich. Probably uses more action verbs than the rest of us combined.
Absolutely.
And having someone like that in the booth who is genuine in his presentation, genuine for his love of the sport that he's calling. And I mean, there'll be times where he just marvels at what he's seeing in front of him, and it comes across. And I think that, for you, Mike, it comes across. If there's something that, when Jason sees something and he'll go, here's your Google reference and annotated Nelson reference for the day, kids, Bud Collins. Mm-hmm. And where Jason will sit there and he'll kind of jump up out of his seat and he'll go, ooh, or, he'll see something. And Jason instantly emotes something that'll come across in his presentation. And for me, it's inflection and, occasional snark and what have you. It's taken a while for us to figure out who we are, and we're still developing. But I think that the emotion that we show is part and parcel to the fabric in bringing in the casual fan as much as the hardcore fan.
Yeah, and I know there's been a lot of discussion, John, lately about the way that MLS in particular is presented on television. And a lot was made of the TV ratings for the national games from this past weekend, and it's kind of created this referendum on how MLS is presented on television. And I don't necessarily think right now ESPN and Fox are doing anything wrong in the way that they're presenting it, but I think we need to have the conversation, and I think we have differing philosophies between the way Fox presents soccer and ESPN presents soccer, where ESPN has committed themselves to using British voices. I don't know if they've done research to tell them that's what their audience demands. I don't know if that's a philosophical decision that they feel like that's what's best for the audience. And this is nothing against John Champion, by the way, who I think is phenomenal. I know Jason is a huge, huge fan of John's as well. It has absolutely nothing to do with that. But it's a much different sound hearing John Champion call a match as opposed to John Strong, where Fox has made the decision that they would like American voices on soccer. They experimented with Gus Johnson. I actually thought that was a really good idea. I think the problem with Gus was they didn't pair him with anyone who could help him. Gus is, in my opinion, kind of the way that I want to hear someone call a soccer match, where it is a lot of emotion, where it is a lot of passion, where he has that feel for it, where he knows that there is a buildup to something big coming, and his voice reflects that. So you have your two national TV partners presenting matches in very different ways right now, and there's no evidence that one works better than the other, because the ratings are pretty much the same. I think a lot to do with the ratings also has to do with how good the game actually is. If you're showing kind of a boring plotting match, you're not going to get the ratings for it. Now, what's disappointing is ESPN had New York City and Minnesota, which was, I think, one of the more fun matches we've had all year in this league. Just as far as being wide open with lots of chances created, Sean Johnson with a howler, and he had a little bit of everything. And they didn't really get the TV rating that I'm sure they were hoping for. That has nothing to do with who was calling the match. Maybe it was just bad luck. But anyhow, I guess I've talked in a circle here. I just think that we have a lot of different ways right now in this country with how soccer is presented. And I guess we need to figure out what the best way is to get eyeballs in front of television sets, because honestly, that's what's going to be key for this league going forward from a revenue generation standpoint, is how do we get the TV contract to a point where people really want to buy into it, people meaning networks, which puts more money in league coffers, which allows teams to spend more on players, and then the quality of play goes up.
Yeah, I think the next step is to get to where the NHL is in terms of those TV revenues, because that's achievable. There's not a massive difference in ratings between the two, and it's a place that you can get. And I think what we've learned, and this is something we talked about earlier, the Minnesota NYC game's a prime example. Last year, that's probably a little more appealing game for a national audience because of David Villa. This year, there's not a must-see player for NYC that a casual fan would know about. Alexander Latricia, great player, fun player to watch. Hardly anybody knows who he is. Minnesota, same thing. Darwin Quintero, great player to watch. He hasn't crossed over into the mainstream yet. You don't have those superstars, and that's what drives the NBA. It's what drives, most sports. The NFL is the only one who can put a matchup out and it's going to get a rating. So MLS has to get to that point where, okay, they're bringing in superstars. They put superstars on national TV, but you have to bring in more money to bring in more superstars, or you have to convince the owners to invest in it to then get more money. Which one comes first? And that's the question I think MLS has right now.
Yeah, I think right now it's the latter today. And that's not going to change until 2021 when you have the next TV contract. I agree that I think NHL is the target right now. I think that would be where potentially MLS could get from a rights standpoint. The problem that MLS is competing against with professional hockey is the largest majority of television rights fees in the National Hockey League comes from Canada, which is just not a pipeline that MLS can tap into right now. I think the Canadian, that Rogers and CBC and whoever chose NHL up in Canada. I think they're paying something to the tune of $800-900 million a year. That's just not something that MLS would ever be able
for
to
sure. Not anytime
to
soon.
get in
but
Canada.
what does the
soon.
NHL get domestically in the United States? Do you know?
Efforting. I think
because they might already be at that level. I was considering the whole package for the NHL, but you're right. It's the Canadian broadcasters that are driving that number up so high.
10-year deal was signed back in 2011, and trying to find out what the actual numbers is. $200 million annually, NBC Sports Group, for the length of the contract.
So that's a little more than double of what you're getting right now from the whole package for MLS. So, yeah, I think that's achievable in the next one. I think definitely you have to get that.
And then you look at the ratings that have come across so far, and right now the ratings are about a week and a half behind when it comes to soccer. And the MLS Bundesliga doubleheader that Fox had earlier in the month, Bundesliga viewing was up 33%, but viewing in general was a 40% drop with the DC United LAFC match that was on the back end of that one. So averaged 565,000 viewers when they did that. And the MLS match at 341 put them 7th in the weekend. 2 matches in the Clausura, the Bundesliga, Everton Arsenal, the international friendly, Newcastle Crystal Palace, and then DC United LAFC. So that's where we were with those. And then the next MLS match was FC Cincinnati and Sporting, which came in at 15th, where you had 3 more Liga MX matches, the CCL semifinal, and both semifinals, and then the other 2 matches in the Premier League, Southampton, Liverpool, Chelsea, West Ham. So as of early April, ESPN's viewing at 313,500. Fox below that about 25,000. Then Univision Deportes at 258,000 right now. So MLS viewing is down in the numbers behind Liga MX, the Clausura, and the Prem.
Yeah, what I want to see long term, and we'll finish with this, Mike, is how it goes with the whole season, because MLS I think is a little unique in the American sports that it kind of is a building process. Attendance is like that. You know, there's been a lot of talk about the attendance being down in some markets, but it's actually kind of static year over year for those dates because it picks up in the summer. I want to see if the TV numbers pick up as well year over year, because MLS has been, over the last 4 or 5 years on TV, it hasn't dropped. It hasn't grown very much, but it's been some steady growth where other properties have seen some of those drops that just TV is seeing as a whole.
Yeah, and I think, last year the Men's World Cup helped, especially with those matches on Fox that would follow some World Cup windows. I think you have the potential for that again this summer with the Women's World Cup. It's really tricky when you're fighting against the NCAA tournament, when you're fighting against the opening week of baseball, when there's a real interest in the baseball season. Unfortunately, Atlanta United against Dallas on ESPN Saturday is going to go up against NBA and Stanley Cup playoffs. So you're right. I mean, you don't really get out of that albatross until June. And we're moving to a schedule next year, reportedly, where you're going to start the season in February. So it's very, very hard for MLS to combat that and fight against college football and NFL and college basketball and all the major professional stick and ball sports. But if you make the on-field product better, that is the key to making the TV numbers go up and stay up consistently.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. And the CBA comes up a couple years before the next TV contract, and I think the owners have to think long-term strategy. Is it time now to invest, because you're going to have the opportunity to create a league structure that allows you to invest before you start negotiating a new TV deal. And I would like to think that it would pay off if you do it.
Yeah. By the way, guys, we have not gotten to the big question of the day from my standpoint with this match coming up Saturday against FC Dallas. John, are you going to play in this match?
We might have lost John. He might have run away from that one.
Or John might not understand the
No.
joke. I didn't set that
No. I think if you add an H, perhaps, and I might be in the
that's
18.
true. That's true. Well, this is an imposter, John Nelson. He doesn't spell his name correctly. You're right. Yeah, I'm talking about John Nelson, their super draft choice out of UNC. He's actually
10th
played
overall. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and he's playing a couple matches for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Before we go, Darren's comments on Eric Remedi yesterday.
Yeah, said it was interesting. Said that he's doing okay. He's day-to-day. They hope to have him back this weekend. Darren also explained that there is a neutral venue doctor that cleared Remedi to return to the pitch. And then he got into how, the baseline concussion test, you kind of start with the baseline that you have from your physical on January 15th. And every day you evaluate the symptoms against the baseline. So just for total clarification, based on Darren's comments, because I know I've seen this a couple different places, it was not an Atlanta United doctor that cleared Remedi to return to the match. It was a neutral third-party doctor in Foxborough. But Darren is saying that there is a chance that Remedi could play this weekend, which I'm a little surprised by that, but that's good news. It sounds like he's not seriously injured.
Yeah, but I mean, this goes back to, I think a lot of people have pounced on that comment. Look, a concussion is the absolute definition of a day-to-day injury.
Right.
And there's just no way to predict it. So he absolutely could be available to play this weekend, and he could be out for 4 weeks. There's no way to know because it is a day-to-day gradual return to activity, gradual ramp up in intensity of activity, see if symptoms return. If they do, you slide back a little bit on the activity. It's the definition of a day-to-day injury. So
yeah.
I think people jumped on that, comparing it to a day-to-day with a hamstring, and it's nowhere near the same thing.
No, it's a good point. And quite frankly, you're not in a position where you really need to rush him back right now.
And they've never rushed guys back anyway.
Yeah, and I would never want to see that ever occur, especially with something as serious as a concussion. But, I mean, you're in a position right now, 2 matches over the next 17, 18 days. I just want Remedi to get well. That was very scary to see on Saturday. And as you know, Jason, I mean, concussions are kind of a marathon, not a sprint. So I'm sure they'll be taking it very, very cautiously.
Yeah, you don't mess with that type of stuff. Mike, thanks. We'll talk to you later with stoppage time at 2 o'clock on Facebook.com/99game. And then on Friday as we get deeper into the Dallas preview.
Sounds good, guys. Take care.
Take care. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Every hiring manager knows that a company is only as good as the people it's made from. So where do you find the best people? That may surprise you.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
This is talent worth knowing about.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, April 17th. It's kind of a slow news day, and now stuff starts popping off. We'll get into one in a minute. There needs to be a little bit of fact-checking because there's weirdness happening. But we do have this one out of the Miami Herald. Michelle Kaufman covering Inter Miami, and Michelle points out some clues that David Beckham's Inter Miami may be in talks with a La Liga defender, and that defender would be Hector Moreno, who plays for Real Sociedad. Moreno, 31 years old, is in, quote, advanced talks with MLS, and David Beckham's new Miami team would be an ideal destination, according to Medio Tiempo out of Mexico. Moreno's played in the last 3 World Cups for Mexico. Moreno's wife, Irene Martinez, posted on Instagram. See, IG always has it. You always get the news from Instagram. Irene Martinez posted a picture of Hector Moreno pushing a stroller through a palm tree-lined street with the caption, "Getting to know our new neighborhood," with an Edgewood, Miami location sticker. You know. There was another photo of the couple's young daughter and Moreno using a tape measure in an empty waterfront apartment, and the caption is, "Taking measurements," with a wink emoji. So, Inter Miami officials would not comment because they don't talk about rumors regarding players under contract with other clubs. So, keep an eye on it. Hector Moreno would be a great addition to start your back line if you're Miami. I'm intrigued. He's under contract through the 2020-2021 season, but he could join Miami, be loaned out. He could come in on loan. They could buy out his contract, what have you. He started with Pumas in Mexico, went to Europe 10 years ago. He's played for AZ. He's played for Espanyol, went to PSV, Roma, and joined Real Sociedad this season. So that'd be a great first addition. And I like that Miami's talking about a player like that as opposed to just big-name superstar, period. You know, Moreno's going to move the needle for you, especially with a Mexican fan base. But he's also a player that is a defender. You need some of those too. So I like that Miami's thinking about the whole package. That's a good player to be linked to.
And are we going to hold off on the other piece of floating information?
Well, no. I mean, we can talk about it because Sky Sports News has posted an article about it. A tweet popped up about an hour ago, and the tweet was from Kaveh Solhekol at Sky.
One of the Sky Report. Yeah.
Sky Sports, before that, The Times. That's his Twitter bio. 165,000 followers. It was Kaveh's first tweet since February 4th. So that kind of like, whoa, what? Huh? That was a little bit of a red flag for me. But Sky Sports has an article, and they have tweeted it out from their account as well. Thierry Henry is in talks with the New York Red Bulls over becoming the MLS club's new manager. Thierry Henry has been a manager now. Didn't go very well.
5 wins in 3 months.
At Monaco. He was sacked in January. He played for Red Bulls from 2010 to 2014. He was very highly regarded. Was an assistant with Roberto Martinez and Belgium. Lots of good things said about his effect on that squad. I wonder about Sky's sentence where it says his arrival would raise their profile and have a dramatic effect on their commercial revenues.
No.
If it does, I've been really confused about what draws commercial revenues in the New York area. Cool. If it does, cool. I'm not surprised that Thierry Henry would be in talks to join the Red Bulls as a manager. I'm not surprised by that at all. I'm surprised about it right now because Chris Armas hasn't had the job for a year. Chris Armas has struggled out of the gate in 2019, but he did keep that team going to a supporter shield in 2018. Feels a little fast to cut bait on Chris Armas, even though I've had some questions about his tactical decisions. Thierry Henry's a big name. It will raise the profile. That part's true. It'll get people talking.
Yeah. Adding to Kaveh Salkahol's piece, Nick Mendola over at Pro Soccer Talk. This is 12 hours ago. So this from Nick's account, it came out at about 10:30 last night. He says, multiple sources tell Pro Soccer Talk Henry's been in talks with Red Bull Global about a coaching role within one of their clubs.
Okay, and again, that makes sense. He played for Red Bulls. There's a relationship there. There's multiple clubs that he could be at. Jesse Marsch will be in charge of Red Bull Salzburg starting next year. I'm a little surprised that you would be thinking about a first-choice manager gig at a club like New York. Is in the Red Bull global landscape, obviously RB Leipzig is the one. That's the top one. Salzburg is a Champions League club. They would be number 2. New York would probably be number 3. I mean, I think some people have bristled at that, but I don't know if that's wrong. And would you feel like, okay, we think Henry could be a better manager than he was at Monaco. We think that he's a big name and it would bring some excitement. All that's good. But do we jettison Chris Armas? Would that help? Would that hurt? What message does that send? I don't know. I'm a little surprised.
Yeah. Mendola, later in his piece, says, would the Red Bulls' European hierarchy cut ties with Armas so early in the season after such an outstanding finish last season, 13-3-3, especially after the club didn't do anything major to offset the sale of Tyler Adams to RBL? No offense, Mark Shutkowski, or could negotiations amount to bringing Henry onto Marsch's staff? The two did not cross over at Red Bull Arena.
That's true. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that Thierry Henry used to work for Sky Sports. So, Sky Sports running with this, you would think that they might have spoken to their former employee and at least got enough to go with a limited report, but a report nonetheless. Mendola's article came out first, and you wonder if Sky Sports is reacting to that and following up after a conversation with Thierry Henry, or if you're just trying to connect the dots, period. Little surprised. But, man, that's got everybody talking. And Red Bulls needs people to talk. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. I just don't know if this is the fix for them. I think it does more damage than good, to be honest.
No, and I agree with you there. I mean, you have a coach who does what he did last season, taking over for Jesse Marsch and continuing to implement the system until he continued to outthink himself. And does a slow start this year, and I put that in quotes. Does that necessitate bringing in a name and disputing the last sentence in the Sky Sports article? There's a lot more that needs to be done to put butts in the seats in Harrison, New Jersey, and I don't think Thierry Henry is going to be that moves the needle to the extent that either Sky or Red Bulls think, just considering what all of the empty seats. And, I mean, weren't they considering placing tarps in some areas in the upper deck at Red Bull Arena because of?
No, they have.
Okay.
They are now. To be fair, they are working on a ongoing renovation of the arena to have more kind of open seating areas, open areas, similar to what happened with the transformation at State Farm Arena. Although they're going to do it over an extended period of time to try to minimize the disruption. So the tarps, that's been part of the explanation for the tarps. Is that 100% accurate? I don't know. I'm not making those decisions, so I can't tell you. But that's what has been explained. And in terms of reshaping the arena a bit, okay, I get that. That's where a lot of arenas are headed. Cool. Understand it. It's a bad look, though. It's a very bad look at the moment.
So, obviously, you and I are going to be keeping an eye on both Sky and Pro Soccer Talk to see if anything is going to come of this. I just look at it and I'm going, I don't know if this is going to move the needle the way that they think. And I think that you're doing more damage than you are reinforcing anything.
Well, look, Thierry Henry was in an interesting situation anyway in terms of moving the needle. I think when Thierry Henry signed with the Red Bulls, the thought was, wow, he's going to change everything. He's a David Beckham. I don't think Thierry Henry was a David Beckham as a player in terms of changing people's mindsets. I just disagree. I think he's another one where he is a big name and he is a player that does grab your attention. Now, I will say this. 2009, Red Bulls drew 12,491 for their home matches. In 2010, they drew 18,441 when Henry joined the club. And it went from 18,4 to 19,7 in 2011 to 18,2 in 2012. So it slid back down to 19,4 in 2013, back up. 2014, 19,4. And then after he left, you're at 19,6. Then in 16, you're at 20,006. So it kept going up. How much of an effect did Henry have? Maybe there was an effect. Maybe I'm underselling it. But as a manager, what would the effect be?
Right.
I don't know. It would bring some life into something. You shouldn't need to bring some life into a defending Supporters Shield winner, but there is that. And obviously there's something going on. So it's just there's so many different layers to this. We're going to take a break. Love to hear your thoughts on Thierry Henry coming to Major League Soccer as a manager after his spell at Monaco didn't go well. Good thing, bad thing? Are you just grabbing the popcorn and waiting to see how it plays out? Let us know what you think at Soccer Down Here. We'll be right back.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Got issues with youth or high school sports? Positive Coaching Alliance can help. PCA is a national nonprofit working to transform youth and high school sports so that every child has a positive character-building youth sports experience. PCA provides live and online workshops to train double-goal coaches whose first goal is winning and whose second, more important goal is teaching life lessons through sports. PCA also has workshops for parents and high school student-athletes. For more information, please visit positivecoach.org.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
I adopted Bento in 2010 from a shelter. This cat makes me make art. He's always motivating me to draw pictures of him. He just is motivating artistically. He's my best friend, but a lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
Keyboard Cat, YouTube star, and Shelter Pet. Amazing adoption stories start in shelters. Start yours today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, April 17th, Wall Pass Wednesday. Thierry Henry reportedly, according to Sky Sports, in talks to become the new manager of the New York Red Bulls. According to NBC Soccer, reportedly in talks to join the Red Bull Soccer Global Group as a manager somewhere. And maybe not the head manager, maybe an assistant. So, differing reports. We'll see what happens. Didn't know that the job in New York was open.
Yeah.
Maybe Chris Armas didn't know that. Not sure.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Exactly.
It's been a slow start for New York, and we'll see if they can find a way to bounce out of it or if changes are needed. Games tonight in multiple leagues. For me, the game of the night is North Carolina Courage hosting Orlando Pride in the NWSL. Courage with a 1-1 draw in the opener at home to Chicago. Orlando kind of dominated by Portland in a 2-0 loss in Orlando. Do the Pride bounce back with a better performance on the road, and do you get an angry North Carolina Courage squad who drop points at home? Kind of lean into the latter. I think the Courage are by far the better team here. A couple matchups in the USL Championship. New York Red Bulls 2 hosting Hartford Athletic. Hartford still looking for their first win in franchise history. Still waiting on their first home game in franchise history. Austin Bold hosting Phoenix Rising. Phoenix is undefeated, but they have 1 win and 4 draws. They did get their first win over the weekend, so we'll see if that gets the Western Conference finalists from last year bouncing out of it. Austin has been hit or miss this season. More misses as an expansion team, which is to be expected. I think Phoenix probably goes in and takes care of business. And then late night in MLS, Vancouver hosting LAFC. I would be surprised by any result that gives Vancouver points here, although they did pull a scoreless draw out of Seattle. Can they do the same against LAFC? I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. I think it's a 1-0 or a 2-1 LAFC. I think it's tight, but I think LAFC gets the win.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that it ends up with LAFC getting the Duke, and I still think that the long season in Hartford continues until they get
home. I mean, that's how it is. I don't think they're a bad squad. They just got to get home, and they got to continue to build it. It's one thing to have the extended road trip to start. It's another thing when it is your first games in club history, and it's just so difficult to build any kind of continuity that way. So we'll see if Jimmy Nielsen can flip the script for Hartford, but I think it waits till they get home. I just don't see it happening before that. Bit of news, too. Montreal has added Omar Brown. We talked about that before. Brown is the leading scorer from Independiente in Panama. It's the effect of the CONCACAF Champions League. You see some guys that stand out. Brown was very good for Los Vikingos, and he gets the loan move to Montreal with an option to buy at the end of it. And with the injury to Nacho Piatti, there could be an opportunity for Brown to get some time pretty quickly. He gives you a different type of forward than Maxi Urruti, but he also is a player who can play out wide, as we saw for Independiente. So keep an eye on Omar Brown. Could be the biggest winner of the CONCACAF Champions League. He might get that opportunity to move on and make more money in Montreal from Panama. The finals of the CONCACAF Champions League will be the Final Regio, the Monterrey Tigres final that CONCACAF has to be pretty happy about. It's going to be an epic one. I'm looking forward to watching that and seeing who comes out on top. I think Monterrey is the better team, not by a ton, but they're the better team. We'll see if they're in the better run of form and the better health when they get into those matches. I think league play will come into it as well because both teams are competing in a very crowded Liga MX at the moment. And will that be a distraction for either one? It could be. It very well could be. It's going to be a fun final, though. I can't wait for that to get started.
Can we talk about yesterday for a little bit?
Yes, let's talk about yesterday. What do you want to talk about?
Ajax, underlined, exclamated, italicized, bold face, large font size.
they took care of business. They have a philosophy and a style of play, and it showed. And it has been there from the early days. I mean, you're talking about a club that, at times has gotten away from who they are, but this group feels like Ajax. The group that Frank de Boer had at Ajax felt like Ajax, and then a lot of that was recovering who they were as a club, because they'd kind of gotten away from that, and they'd started spending money on players, getting away from promoting from within, getting away from teaching the game in a consistent way. De Boer was part of, I believe it was called the Velvet Revolution at the time, and it was one of the last big moves in the career of Johan Cruyff, where he kind of helped behind the scenes put a lot of former Ajax players into positions, whether it was in the front office. From a business perspective, it was De Boer becoming the manager. It was Dennis Bergkamp being involved as a technical director, other players, former players being involved in the academy, and he helped get Ajax back to where they were. Now, then De Boer won 4 straight titles, which had never happened before for the club. Couldn't get over the hump in Europe, and De Boer was ready to move on after 6 years in charge of Ajax. He moves on. They hadn't won a league title since. And now you're competing at the Champions League level. It doesn't happen if the Velvet Revolution doesn't happen. But all of that has paid off, and sometimes it takes that time in the academy side. You know, it's one for De Boer to win 4 league titles. That's a big thing. But all of that academy development has led to this generation. And look, Ajax knows who they are. This group, I mean, you already know Frankie de Jong is leaving at the end of the year. Others are going to leave. That's what happens. They build, they sell, they reinvest, new generation comes through. But for this group, you know, this is that last ride. We talked about it with Atlanta United last year. You knew that there were going to be moves that happened at the end of the year. You knew Miguel Almiron was going to go. It had that last ride, you want to go out on top type of feel. This has that feel for Ajax. And they went into to Italy last night and just controlled the game, which was surprising to me. We talked about it on Soccer Over There, like which underdog had the better opportunity. I thought Manchester United would have, and honestly, if they get one of those goals early on, it's a whole different scenario in Barcelona. But they don't. They don't convert. They get punished. They're done. I was really surprised by how ineffective Juventus was. And it's not to take away from Ajax. It's not to take away from how well they played. They did what I think you would have expected them to do. I just didn't think it'd be as easy to do it. I thought Juventus would put on a better fight, and they just did not seem to know how to cope with it. A little surprising for me.
And according to Bloomberg, and this came out in one of their articles this morning, the loss and them getting blown out of Champions League apparently cost the club $450 million in value.
Reportedly. And hold on, before we go to break, Trains, I want to make something clear since you want to call people out. He said, y'all talked about if there was pressure in New York over early results. Now you don't know if getting rid of the coach is a good idea. Waffling, L. Trains, there's a big difference between pressure over early results and firing a coach who just won a supporter shield after a handful of matches. Those are two different things. You can't equate the same. I don't think MLS is ever going to get to a point where you're firing managers after 4 or 5 games on a regular basis. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I just don't think it's the way that the league is structured. Those are two different things. It's not waffling. I take a little bit of offense to that because, yeah, there should be pressure on the Red Bulls. Do you think there shouldn't be? They've started out slowly. They're a club that has won 3 supporter shields in the last 5-6 years. Their start is unacceptable. It's okay to say that and not say that Chris Armas should be fired. And especially, and this is the part that I have more of the issue with, is, okay, you were going to bring Jesse Marsch back. You were going to go get an established manager. All right, there's a little bit more of a conversation, but it's not like Thierry Henry lit the world on fire at Monaco. And you're going to replace Armas, who is in his first job, but he had been there and knows the system, with Thierry Henry, who was not there in this system and has not been part of this system. That's a bigger difference. And yeah, it's okay to question that. I'm all for the questions, but I think that's a little harsh, and I don't think it's even really the conversation that we've been having about it. So that's just my thoughts. If you disagree, it's all good. That's what we're all here for. That's what we do. But it's not waffling, in my opinion, because there's a big difference about feeling pressure and firing a manager to bring in an unproven one who has no experience managing in that type of system of play. I think you're opening the door for things to get worse, not better. Just me. Just my opinion. Let's take a break. Final break. Wall Pass Wednesday. Give us your thoughts right after this.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Got issues with youth or high school sports? Positive Coaching Alliance can help. PCA is a national nonprofit working to transform youth and high school sports so that every child has a positive character-building youth sports experience. PCA provides live and online workshops to train double-goal coaches whose first goal is winning and whose second, more important goal is teaching life lessons through sports. PCA also has workshops for parents and high school student-athletes. For more information, please visit positivecoach.org.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
I adopted Bento in 2010 from a shelter. This cat makes me make art. He's always motivating me to draw pictures of him. He just is motivating artistically. He's my best friend, but a lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
Keyboard Cat, YouTube star and shelter pet. Amazing adoption stories start in shelters. Start yours today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Final segment, probably a little bit of stoppage time as well. Soccer down here, Wall Pass Wednesday. Big news everybody's talking about. Maybe it's news, maybe it's not news. Thierry Henry potentially to the New York Red Bulls, potentially to Red Bull Global Soccer as a manager or an assistant or something, and he's been linked by Sky Sports to the New York Red Bulls specifically. I don't know what media availability is for Red Bulls today, but it's going to be an interesting question for Chris Armas when he's available to speak to the media. It's
like, hey, yo, dog, you see Twitter?
I don't know. We'll see. There's obviously an issue with New York. I mean, let's be real. They are not the New York Red Bulls that they were last season.
No.
The results are very clear in that. Why is that the case? You've had the deep dives into, are they trying to become more of a possession team? Are they trying to change the way they play a little bit? They're 1-3-2. They have 8 goals in 5 games. They've given up 8 goals in 5 games. That's probably the one that's surprised me the most. They've lost 2 games at home. That's really surprising. And the way they've lost and who they've lost to is surprising. So is that slump after a long year? Is that slump because of CONCACAF Champions League? Is it managerial decisions? Is it a little bit of all of the above? Or another factor is, have they just not replaced Tyler Adams? That's the interesting one to me. 1 second. Is that if you're going to play the same system, I don't think you were going to be able to do it without a Tyler Adams type or just a very strong holding midfielder to replace him, even if it's a different personality, different characteristics. A very good defensive midfielder to replace him, and you didn't do that. So if Chris Armas made the decision, along with Dennis Hamlet and everybody in charge at New York Red Bulls, to, okay, we don't have a direct replacement. We're not going to go get a direct replacement. We need to tweak how we play a little bit to overcome that, and maybe that takes a little time. All right, it's possible. It's not working so far, and there's not really a whole lot of light at the end of the tunnel, although it was a better result in Kansas City over the weekend, so you have to give him that.
I was just going to say that for me it leans toward choice D, but the replacement or lack of a replacement for Tyler Adams lending itself to the other factors that you mentioned previously.
Well, but you got to go do it then. I mean, if it's, okay, we're going to change the whole way we play that we've built for years because we've lost one player, well, you got to replace the player.
Yes.
I mean, if that player's that vital and you've built this style and this system and this philosophy and now you're going to change it because of the loss of one player, you got to go replace that player. One, you got to develop more players like it, and that should be a priority. And sometimes in your development pipeline, you may have some misses. You know, it was talked about yesterday on, I believe it was Monday, on Atlanta United's U17s playing at the Generation Adidas Cup. And David Goss and Bobby Warshaw were calling the match against Ulsan Hyundai of South Korea, and talked about a conversation they had with Tony Annan. You know, that group, that U17 group, didn't really have a true number 9. You've had number 9s come through. You've had Patrick Okonkwo come through. You've had Jackson Conway come through. You're in a gap. You don't have one right now, so you're having to kind of mix and match and figure it out. That happens on the development side sometimes. But that's where the senior club has to say, okay, we don't have that Tyler Adams replacement coming through the academy. We don't have him at Red Bulls 2. We're going to have to go out into the market and replace this player, because otherwise we're going to have to change the way we play. And it's not just – that's not that simple for the Red Bulls, because their style is so indoctrinated into who they are. To change it, it's not easy.
And so that's the thing, is I think that it's not replacing the one player and then everything else cascading from that. So that's why I was wondering if choice D and lending itself back to your previous points of all of the above, but contributing to it is not getting a replacement for a Tyler Adams.
Yeah. I mean, it could be.
That's why I asked.
It could be. It could be. I'd love to know the decision behind it, though. That's the thing here, is that could you just not go find one if you didn't find one in the market? Okay. Did you decide to change the way you play a little bit because you couldn't find one? Okay. Like, that conversation really hasn't been had. So that's what's interesting about the way that the conversation is out in New York about the Red Bulls. Be curious to see how this evolves. I don't think it's a good move. I don't think it's a good move to bring in Thierry Henry for Chris Armas. In that conversation about those two, I don't think it's an upgrade. It feels like a name, an unproven name, to replace somebody who's been there and been part of building the system as an assistant and knows the system and the club inside and out. I think Chris Armas has a better feel of who the New York Red Bulls are than Thierry Henry does. And I think you're setting yourself up for more failure if you go in that direction. I really do.
Yeah, no, I agree with you in that regard. That's what was running through my head, is that I think that you're setting yourself up for more chaos, which is not something that you need right now, as you're trying to get yourself above the playoff bar and back to where you were last year.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. All right, that'll do it for a Wall Pass Wednesday. We'll be back tomorrow. If you missed on the app and on the website and on Spreaker, let's see. Yesterday, you got Two's Review. Broke down Memphis and North Carolina wins for Atlanta United 2 and their performances. You also got some clips from post-game comments from Stephen Glass, from Jackson Conway, from goalkeeper Brendan Moore as well. That was posted last night. You got your USL Championship in 10. Get your 10 things you need to know about the USL Championship, and I think I missed the mark by about 12 seconds this time. Trying to get the 10-minute mark, and it just
anywhere.
Barely missed it. Man, I was about dead on point last time. I'll see if I can do better with the NWSL in 10. We'll have our first one of those this week. We'll have USL League 1 in 10 this week. We'll have a new Roots Up podcast as well. That's going to hit into your ear holes later today, so be on the lookout from that from Riley and crew. Stoppage time will be at 2 o'clock on facebook.com/929thegame. Myself, Mike Conti, Jimmy Vance will have our video show for y'all. Have some Whiteboard Chronicles. We'll talk about how Atlanta handled New England. We'll look ahead to Dallas and their visit to Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and then we'll be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Soccer Down Here, Thursday Thoughts. Go ahead and send them our way on Twitter, @SoccerDownHere. Thanks for listening, y'all. Mucha plata.
Mucha Santi Moar, y'all.